So here we are, another episode of HopeSpeak. I'm Tyler Hope, aka Hopey, your host today. Here on HopeSpeak, we like to talk about health, fitness, sports, combat sports, crushing heads, but more importantly, what goes inside the head, mental health and mindsets. So today we have Paul Hosking, a well-renowned Muay Thai coach, athlete as well. So can you give us a little bit of a lowdown on what you are doing with yourself these days?
Yeah, hey guys, thank you for having me, Tyler.
Pleasure.
Yeah, my name is Paul Hosking. I am the head coach of Pretty Muay Thai and Boxing in Cairns. I've been involved in combat sport for most of my life, but seriously as a coach probably in the last 4 years.
So what got you into combat sports? Where did it all start for you?
I started when I was a kid. I was getting into a lot of fights in school. So that's probably how a lot of people get into combat sport. But that's how I got into it, mate. I got into a fight with a kid in school. Didn't end very well for either of us. I ended up going home to my parents to obviously face the music. And my father said to me, "You've got two choices. You either learn how to shut that mouth of yours, or you learn how to protect it." So I just said, "Mate, I'll take the second choice." Absolutely, let's go. And then I started my journey. I think I was about 11 or 12. I joined boxing. My older cousin, was a boxer at the time. He He represented the Cook Islands at the Commonwealth Games a few times in a row. He's a bronze medalist. And so my father took me to see him, and just started from there, man. I fell in love with it all.
Yeah. So with that, I guess, was it a big club? Did they have a big community in that boxing club there?
No. So I was really lucky. I was really blessed. It was just me and him.
Okay.
He wasn't coaching or anything like that. He was just training. And then he kind of just took me under his wing. Yeah. So shout out to the Robatis, actually. My cousins, his sons are actually boxing at the moment. His oldest boy, he's fighting in the cruiserweight division. He's making a bit of a name for himself in the boxing scene in Australia.
Awesome.
So he's doing pretty well. So yeah.
Cool. All right. So then, what was the change from boxing to Muay Thai for you? There's obviously a big difference between the disciplines.
Yeah. So. It is a bit of a story, but I'll try and keep it short and sweet. My first exposure to Muay Thai, I was a security guard. I think I was about 21, 22. Yeah. And I went to the local PCYC, and hope you'd remember these shows.
I remember we touched on this. Yeah, I was there as well, and it was hot and sweaty, and it was packed, and everyone's standing up.
And I was doing security there, and I remember the main event being Aid Walker, who I ended up fighting for my state title years on, probably about 10, 11 years after that, actually. And he was the main event. And I remember seeing Muay Thai for the first time, and I remember absolutely hating it. I remember watching it and thinking to myself, this is horrible. There's just, in my mind at the time, obviously, not being very educated in the sport, not understanding what was going on in front of me, comparing it to boxing, I just felt like there just didn't seem to be very much thinking. There just didn't seem to be very much strategy to what they were doing. And so I was off the sport from watching it, actually. That was my first exposure to it, yeah.
It was a bit like Sock and Robots.
Yeah, which is what it seemed like to me. And obviously boxing being the sweet science, and the way I was taught to box was, all about hitting and not getting hit. And that was my first exposure to Muay Thai. And then I think maybe about a year or two later, I walked into my first Muay Thai gym. Off of being at a boxing tournament, I ran into a friend who was training at a local gym here in Cairns, Naksu Muay Thai, and I met my then coach at the time, Boy, who's he's had hundreds of fights. He's a Thai straight from Thailand, and watching him train Muay Thai, watching him teach Muay Thai, that really just gave me a real bit of a shock. Like, wow, no, Muay Thai is actually really, really high level. Very, very similar to boxing in a lot of ways, if it's taught correctly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how I got into Muay Thai. Very late, very late. I think it was about 22, 23 when I got into it.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously once you got that, so was it also like a traditional aspect of it as well? That, or is just the style of teaching?
No, definitely it was definitely the culture, definitely the traditional side. Obviously, I come from a Polynesian background, which we're very big on culture and tradition, and I come from a traditional Cook Island family.
Yeah.
I wasn't what you would say like in love with the culture, like the Thai culture. I know a lot of people are, and it's a beautiful culture. But I already had a sense of culture, if that makes sense, when I came to Muay Thai. I have a very strong sense of like the Polynesian culture, and very proud to be Polynesian. So for me, it was just seeing similarities in their culture that really resonated with mine. In terms of like Cook Island culture is very vibrant. It's very bright. We're very very passionate about music. We're very passionate about dancing, singing. A lot of our costumes that we perform in are very bright and colorful, which is very similar to Thai culture. Very similar in all of those ways, and even Muay Thai itself, very very bright, very vibrant. Boxing shorts with tassels and all that sort of stuff. Which is again a boxing thing as well. But
speaking on that, I seen a little clip the other day of you with one of your athletes before she jumped into the ring, and I noticed like because they always tend to wear different tassels and headbands and stuff, but I noticed I think it was like a woven leaf thing or whatever. Is that something that you've like adapted and kind of put your Cook Island tradition onto?
Yeah, so we're talking about the headdress, the moncon that Jesse was wearing. Yes, so that's my moncon. That was made for me by Jesse for my very last fight. And yes, it has a lot of meaning to me because it has a lot of my culture. There's 5 frangipani flowers down the side. And the frangipani is the national flower of the Cook Islands. And that just represented the most important people in my life at the time, like my parents, my fiance, my 2 children, and my best friend at the time. So that's what that was. And then the leaves as well. So that represented like the Islands where I'm from. Yeah. So,
cool. Yeah. That's pretty cool how you've like blended both of the kind of traditions. I think
and that's another big thing why I really love Muay Thai, because there is the freedom to do that. There are a lot of sports that they're very rigid in what they do, and you cannot wear that, you cannot wear this. Muay Thai, it's pretty.
I've seen a few guys wear like almost like a pattern towel kind of thing. I think is like a Turkish. I'm not too sure whether it is. And I've seen them and then with a headband. So I've seen that on a few things as well.
Yeah, so, I've seen this as well. Yeah.
So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So moving from that into, I guess, coaching, you've now been running your own gym for some time now. What were some of the biggest hassles or moments that you maybe like, fuck, this might not work? Or did you not even have any? It just took off? Because people always want to talk about all the good shit. I like to talk about some of the hard gritty parts.
In terms of, what are we talking? In terms of coaching?
Was there just any moments where you... Yeah, I guess with the business, I guess that's another side. Like people like, to talk about it. People love the idea of having their own gym and it's great culture, but there's a lot of shit that goes on in the, behind the closed doors of actually allows that to uphold that. So were there any moments where you thought like, fuck, this might not even come together? Or was it worth it? Could be another way.
It was definitely worth it. It has definitely come back to us 100-fold. The decision to step out on our own and build our own thing. I don't think I really had any moments of thinking this isn't going to work. I've always been pretty confident that things were going to work out for myself, and not just because I just feel like it's gonna happen. I'm very one thing that a lot of people don't know about me is I'm very, very plan oriented, especially when it comes to business or when it comes to coaching. I'm very, very specific about what I want to do and where I want to go. I don't like to leave things up to chance, and I'm very big on that in combat and competing as well with my fighters. I don't like to have my fighters or hear things like, anything could happen. You never know what's going to happen. Like that sort of stuff for me, I find a little bit stressful.
Yeah.
So I like to plan a lot. I like to take steps, and I like to, be more action oriented. Once I plan something, I focus on that, and I push forward to achieve those things. And then I look at, this is the goal. How do I get there? Instead of, this is the goal. Geez, that's a lot of work. I focus on the things that I can focus on the things that I can change.
And I think that really makes the saying clear that a goal without a plan is just a dream.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So if you don't have things in place, it's just going to fall apart.
And so I would say probably the biggest, I don't even know what to call it, like a hurdle or issue
hassle.
Of being a coach. Yeah, or hassle of being a coach, which is funny because it's the very thing that you need to become a great coach, it's just people. It's just the variable of humans. You know what I mean?
Managing people.
Yeah, managing people. That's always just been probably the biggest concern. It's just like how to get the best out of a person, how to give enough, and figuring out how to not give too much.
Yeah.
So I think that's been the biggest hassle, is just figuring out how people work and how to best guide them.
I think
towards their goals.
Is picking up different language or the way you can talk to people. Like with my online coaching, I have some people that respond really well to me doing a screen recording of going over their spreadsheet. Hey, how's you going? Blah, blah, blah. They respond really well. They send me like a little bit of a video back, kind of having a conversation. Some people I send a video like that. They're just like, okay, cool. That's it. Like they just want to text to me. They don't want to have like a cool, like that kind of thing. So learning how people like to communicate and trying to communicate back to them in their language. I think that's one of the hardest skills as a coach. And also the whole point of teaching. Some people are more readers, some are visual or like kinesthetic learners where I'm physically doing. So picking up on that, I think a lot of people underestimate how hard that can be as a coach, picking that up.
Definitely. And I think, I don't believe that I've had much hassles, but I believe that's because what I'm actually doing with my life is what I want to do. It's what I actually enjoy doing. So even having to deal with people in that way, for me, it's all part of it. It's all part of the job. It's all part of what I want to do with my life, what I chose to do with my life. So yeah.
A big thing when it comes to motivation, and this is something I learned during this STC Fit learning course, they talk about understanding your core values. And when you know what your values are, if you can put them behind the tasks and jobs that you need to do with your business, you don't need to get motivated because you literally want to do it because you value it. It's something that you see as highly valuable, so you go get it. Like I used to be like with posting a lot on social media and trying to write posts and information or making reels. I used to hate trying to make these videos. I felt wanky talking on camera and having my little lights and, having a ring light. I hated the idea that I was like an influencer doing all that kind of shit. Once I understood like one of my core values were authenticity, contribution and connection, I was like, okay, like I'm contributing to people or even one person from that post. If I can make a difference to someone, or they may connect with me and reach out and have a conversation. I'm like, well, this is why I'm doing it. So now I don't have to like muster up and rewrite things or whatever. It just becomes a lot easier. I don't have to get motivated. I just know when I need to do it, follow my plan. As you're talking about planning, having some kind of roster with it, and going from there.
For sure. Yeah. I completely agree.
Yeah. So there's some interesting and funny videos that you guys do. I'm sure it's not all your wit. I'm sure there's other brains behind that and that are creative.
1000%. Yeah. My fiance handles all of those sort of things, all the reels and all the funny stuff. That's definitely from her brain. Well, we work very well together that way. So yeah. Would
you also say like her strengths complement your weaknesses and vice versa?
Absolutely. Yeah. I say to her all the time, and I say to anybody that would hear it, I wouldn't be where I am without her. And I mean that very, very literally. I mean that very literally. I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing right now at the level I am doing it in such a short period of time without her. Because I always say to her, you know, I can think I'm the best coach in the world. That's cool. Like, you know, I'm the best. But if I got nobody on my mats, like, you know, who cares? Like, you know, like nobody cares. Whereas her strength is she is able to bring those people to me. She brings them through the door, and my strength is keeping them on the mats. It's keeping them coming back. But it's that initial thing of getting people to your gym, which I think a lot of people struggle with. And I think that comes down to a lot of people who start gyms, and I don't know if this is in the strength and conditioning or lifting industries as well, but I know that in martial arts, what I've seen growing up and watching other people run gyms and open gyms is that I believe a lot of people who start a gym business are not actually passionate about business. They're actually passionate about what they're doing. And so they think to themselves, yeah, you know, it'd be really great to have a boxing gym, my own boxing gym where people will come and train and all that sort of stuff. But they don't actually realize that it's not about that. That's not what people's going to bring people. It's the business side of things. It's being able to market towards people. And I think a lot of, if you're really passionate about martial arts, but you're not passionate about business, it's going to be difficult. You're going to struggle. Whereas myself and my fiance, Frankie, we love business. Like we're so passionate about it. We love learning about how things work and, you know, how businesses run and all that sort of stuff. I'm not so much big on numbers. That's her, you know, that's her area of expertise. She likes to figure out things and, you know, what numbers mean and all that sort of stuff. But we're super passionate about business. I'm super passionate about starting businesses and building businesses to a place where that business can, you know, reproduce for itself and regenerate money and all that sort of stuff. So, I think we definitely work very, very well together, for sure.
That's awesome. Great to hear, and well done on that front as well.
Thank you.
So we already touched a little bit before with your Queensland title fight. Would you say that's your biggest accolade or title that you would say is best achievement as a fighter yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say in terms of achievements, you know, physical achievements that you can see, definitely was my WMC state title. I fought Abe Walker, who at the time, I think he had double the amount of fights I had, which is something I didn't know until I actually stepped in the ring with him. But as I said, the first time I ever saw Prickles, I think he was the main event for the first Muay Thai session, Muay Thai fight night that I'd ever seen. And then to fight him, you know, I think it was about 10 years later, was a pretty big achievement for me. You know, I've been watching him for a long time and thinking to myself, like, you know, geez, that he's a dangerous, savage man. Like, that man likes blood. That man likes to inflict damage on people. And, you know, to share the ring with him and then to come away with the win and to come away pretty unscathed. I mean, I had a cut. I gave him a cut. He gave me a cut. I had a few like eggs on my legs from checking his very hard kick. But apart from that, I came out with all my faculties intact.
That's pretty minimal for Muay Thai in general, right?
1,000%, 100%, and that's that's a big thing for me as well. I believe that my training as a boxer, as a pure boxer, really helped me transition that to Muay Thai, being very hard to hit because I already had a good foundation of, you know, how to avoid being damaged too much, how to give and how to not take. So I would say that was definitely my biggest achievement. Most of my fights were great fights, even the ones I lost. So I lost to some pretty big names, and then I beat some pretty big names. It's definitely. They always talk about that. Like people always talk about the journey being more important than the destination.
The destination.
Yeah, it might be a cliche, but like, man, when you go through it, you actually realize that it's the truth. It's absolutely the truth, you know.
And if you are enjoying that stuff, you know that you're passionate about it, and because I competed last Sunday and we had the little comp and whatnot. It was my first one back in some time. And a few of the people were going, oh, I'm nervous, I fucking hate it. And they were kind of like dreading it. And I was like, oh, yeah, I've already had diarrhea this morning, almost vomited earlier. It's not even a big comp, but I actually laugh at it and I enjoy it. As fucked up and weird as it sounds, like having butterflies and nerves to that kind of extremity where you feel a little bit physically sick, like that excites me. That like it's something that I should be doing. It's something
For
that
sure.
is. I'm grateful to be able to pursue something like that. Which I guess some people may not like that part of the journey, and that's totally fine. But that's something that's clicked for me, and I guess like a part of gratitude too, to have this surreal kind of effects on my body when I'm able to do that. So if anyone's listening in and they do struggle with it and they're unsure, maybe that helps you feel more comfortable that it means that you care about it and you want to succeed in that.
I always say, like, it makes you feel. It reminds you like you're alive, you know, like this is what it means, like, to be alive, like, and when you know you're about to get into like a confrontation, you know, this is just normal, like it's your body telling you like, hey, we're about to get it on, you know, so you know,
things could go bad.
100%. So, you know, stay focused, open your eyes, you know, look, and do your best, like, so. Yeah, no, it's definitely all part of the process. I believe it's how you label it as well, which is a big thing that my fighters, that we work on with my fighters, is that labeling the feelings instead of, you know, I'm nervous. It's like, well, no, that's adrenaline. That's adrenaline, and you know, you're about to get into a fight, and it's normal. It's all part of the process. Yeah,
there's been a fight and flight response kind of going on, and understanding that side of kind of natural reactions.
Sorry? Go again?
You're saying having a bit of flight or fight response going on, and you have that natural reactions, and you got to fight that a little bit. That's quite overwhelming as well.
Yeah, for sure. And it's actually it's a good thing you brought that up, because it's actually one of the ways that I actually develop a lot of my fighters and a lot of my students is working with those feelings of fight and flight. Because in my mind, when I talk to my fighters, I will ask them, you know, in a potentially confrontation situation, what is your first go-to? Would you fight, or would you flight? Like, would you just walk away and not want a bar of it, try to avoid it? And depending on their answer, it usually helps me figure out how to develop them as fighters. Yeah, because not all people fight the same way. There's so many. There are different styles, but there are a few base styles that you can figure out just the way people naturally react to a situation like that. So, like, for example,
makes sense.
Yeah, it just makes sense. So, for example, my top fighter, Jessie Gill, her natural reaction is flight. She is not interested in getting into a physical, verbal confrontation with anybody. And so because of that, I've been able to develop her into a very, very good counter fighter. Very, very good at avoiding situations that are potentially dangerous situations for her in the ring. And she avoids that. And she's much more of a backward fighter, at least early in the rounds. She's very much a step back, make you miss, make you pay. And then I've got my other champ my other two champs, but one of my other champs, Paddy Reed, he is a security guard, a former Army veteran. You know, he was in a motorcycle club for a long time. You know, he's so for him, it's what would be your reaction? And he's, fight. Absolutely. I'd fight them, you know, and whether it's verbal or whether it's physical, I'm in there, like I'm giving it to them. And so I was able to develop him into a more forward fighter, you know, more aggressive, still tactical, still thinking with your head, but more looking to engage, you know, in a fight. And it works. It works out. It works for them. They, instead of me trying to turn them into something they're not, which is what I find a lot of coaches do. And I don't know that if that's from laziness or from like a lack of knowledge. I'm not sure, but I see a lot of coaches try to say take a person who is a naturally just not a confrontational person and saying to them, you know, you got to be tougher, you got to take it, you got to, you know. It never really ends well. Never really ends well.
I think it's where people are just sometimes like, oh, this is what I done and this is how I had success and this is like how it works. And this is very prominent in the fitness industry with a lot of PTs. Like, I dieted this way, kind of do this method and whatever, and whether there's keto or whatever stuff, and that kind of gets pushed instead of actually questioning and asking questions and building stuff on their answers. And it's perfectly like what you're saying, like how they would be with confrontation. I quite often ask people in situations about their lifestyle and how they react, and also how they react to check-ins. Some people, I'm like, hey, you're not pulling your weight this week, what's going on? And they go, oh, fuck, you're right, I need to do this, thanks for pulling me up. So then I know that person kind of wants to be growled, you could say. So then I know I can be a bit more upfront, but some of them are like, they'll be avoidant and run away. If I try to ask them more questions, they'll just run away. And I won't hear, and especially with online coaching, they just ignore you for a week, and come back, and they'll finally get back to you when they're kind of doing better again. So sometimes I just have to be like, hey, are you okay? What's going on? Not actually even mention about what they may not have been doing aligned with their goals. And that's not my job as well. As my job sometimes is more the fact of just allowing them to feel comfortable with themselves. Because if people feel better with themselves, they're more likely to make better decisions. I'm sure you know this too. Like even when people turn into the gym, so with that idea of people making better decisions, do you find people like come into training just with a shitty mood, and it's like do they have a thing like in the self-sabotage sense where they just turn up and like just want to get belted around? I know this has just popped up into my mind with the idea of self-sabotage, where if they're not feeling well, or is it just an element of they're just not focused and they cop it?
I would say the first one, where people come in with a bit of an attitude on the mats. I have had that in the past. But in my gym, there's not really any room for that.
Yeah.
I'm very big on, whatever's going on outside of here. When you come here, you leave that at the door. You pick it up when you leave. If there is something that you want to speak on, if there is something that you want to talk about, 100%, we can definitely do that. But right now, that's not the time for it. Right now, there are 20 other people on the mats who've come here to do work. They just want to work. And I think a lot of people struggle with separating personal from professional, emotional from, just getting the job done. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I'm always kind of reminding my students and my fighters, hey, development doesn't care about how you feel. Development doesn't care that you've had a really bad day today. All it cares about is that you get the job done. And I believe fighting is one of the few things in life that you can get into that is so similar to your own life, life in general, that you end up learning a lot from even if you just had one fight, or if you went through a fight camp. Fighting is very similar to life. So people end up learning how to deal outside of the gym, just through coming to the gym and training, especially an art like Muay Thai and even an art like Jiu-Jitsu, like a very individualized sport where, man, it's up to you. It's all on you. Like you've got us here. We support you, man. We're here. We'll help you. But when you cross those ropes or you step onto those mats, it is all on you. And that's literally what life is. Like we've got people around us who, cheering us on or hating us. But at the end of the day, at the end of it, you got to get out there and handle it. And so when people come into my mats and they might have a bit of an attitude, it just doesn't fly in my gym. I just don't allow it. Yeah. Because then, what always happens is they'll come in, they've got an attitude, people feel that, it starts to affect their training. They don't want to say the wrong thing in case they upset the person. And for me, it's like that's not what my gym is about. We're not
the
about
atmosphere that you want to have.
Yeah, that's not the atmosphere I'm after. And and it's not personal. It's not that I don't want you here, but there has to be an attitude adjustment if you want to be training on my mats. If you want to be here, you got to be able to just control that emotion, and then revisit it later, in person, away from the class. We can sit down. You can tell me what's going on with your life, and I'll happily listen. And if I can help. If that's all you want, you just want me to listen, I'll listen. If you want advice, I'll give you advice. but it's time and place, which I find. I mean, after the amount of time I've been doing this, I'm very easy to figure out because I'm very vocal about what I want. People walk into my gym and they know, okay, I can't come in here and mope about on the mats, so they come in and they get the job done, and then
you set that expectation.
And I set the expectation early. So, but that's definitely something I have dealt with in the past. And initially, when I first kind of dealt with it, it was with somebody who was very close to me on a personal level, and I think that's where it's harder. Because they're your friend. You don't want to upset them, and you want them to feel better about being there with you in your gym. But as time has gone on, I've learned to be better at handling those type of situations.
When you said before about some people with attitudes and egos, I find in jiu-jitsu, if anyone comes in with a bit of an ego, it's really quick for someone to kind of get humbled, and I think it is because jiu-jitsu is quite foreign, being on the ground. Do you find that still with Muay Thai or even boxing? My view looking into it is you can still kind of be athletic and fit and maybe still be able to get away with it a little bit. Do you feel it's still maybe one session, or is it maybe a little bit longer takes for them to be humbled and kind of take it all on board?
Absolutely. I think it takes longer than one session, which is what I found. And it's exactly what you're saying. It's a lot of people that have that kind of attitude are athletic. They're gifted. They're able to come on the mats and have varying degrees of success. Have good success because they're physically gifted, they're bigger, they're faster, all that sort of stuff. So, but I have a few ways of handling that sort of thing, and one of the things that I have is that I just have an expectation again across the board. I don't care how long you've been doing Muay Thai. I don't care if you've never done it before. I don't care how much experience you've had. Everyone has to start at the same place when they come to my gym. And they have to go to my basics class. I don't care if you've had 10 fights. I don't care if you've had 100 fights. You've got to go to my basics class, because what that does then is, one thing, they learn how my gym works. They learn the systems and processes. When I say something, they understand what I'm talking about. So that gets rid of a lot of that.
It's the same language as well.
Exactly. But then it also filters people. So people who arc up and, I'm too good for the basics. I'm not going to go to that class. I'm going somewhere else. They'll go somewhere else. And for me, it's, that's okay. You've just shown me that you're not very teachable anyway. And, and I just don't have the time for it. So, and it's not personal. It's just, I need to know that the people who come and train at my gym, on my mats, they're there because they want to be there. They're there because they want to learn from us. They want to learn the way we do things. And they're interested in their development. Because I know that a lot of people who go to fight gyms, their motivations are not always like that. Their motivations are, to get in there and
scrap.
Yeah, have a scrap. And
that's one of the reasons why I did Muay Thai for about 6 months, maybe a little bit shorter than that, when I was 18, around the time I first got into jiu-jitsu. And I just gave it up because I got sick of having guys just trying to kick my head off. It's like, why are you trying to head kick me when we spar? Fair enough with sparring and you want to push each other, but it's like, you're actually trying to hurt me, not score. And that's the whole point. You want to beat your whoever. The same thing in jiu-jitsu. Sometimes you turn it up, but you're doing it to a degree. And I think that just comes around with martial arts. Having great strength is a great responsibility. They still need to be able to control it to a degree.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the reasons why I kind of just gave it up, because I got sick of kind of getting walloped around. And it's not that I got a problem taking a beating. It's it just affects your training for several days. You can't get into a real rhythm.
And look, again, coming back to development, no elite sport allows that kind of thing. Yeah. Let's look at rugby, for example. They play a hard game on the weekend, and then the rest of the week leading into their next game, it's skills, it's drills, it's hitting the gym, it's recovery. It's not a full-on 80-minute game on Monday and a full-on 80-minute game on Wednesday, and then they got to play again on Saturday. they're professionals, right? So they say that heavy, hard-hitting stuff for the game.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem in combat sport. It's not just Muay Thai. It's not just jiu-jitsu. It's not just boxing. It's just like it's a culture across the board.
Yeah.
Where people just go in and they just absolutely hammer each other. And
I think it's also just like periodization in general, like having a plan, right?
Exactly.
And this is even like, I'm going to say in the fitness industry, like I see some PTs just like smashing their clients. And I have this thing now, I hate it. I know people do it because people like to react to it on social media. But when they're posting photos on the story of their client on the ground, oh, this one almost vomited, this one's fucked. And like seeing this stuff, it's like, it's not hard. You can give someone 100 burpees, they're almost going to burp. Like that didn't take any real kind of knowledge. And there is a time and place to push someone really to the limit. But when I'm seeing it a lot, I'm like, well, are you planning ahead or are you just tackling that day at a time? And fair enough, you can train hard, you're going to get results. There's going to be a response. But the longevity eventually is going to be injuries and breakdown. And that then tends to lead with motivation and all dips.
And that is, somebody asked me like a few days ago, a couple of weeks ago, what is my highest priority as a coach? And I had to think about it. But my highest priority as a coach is safety. It's safety. For my fighters when they get in the ring, I want them to be safe. For when my students, when they're on the mats, I want them to be safe. I want them to have longevity in the sport, in martial arts. And it's exactly what you're saying, is that there's nothing safe about these practices. Like there's nothing safe about, having your, and I know what you're talking about. I've seen these where people just, oh, look at him, he's vomiting. Like, oh, I did such a great job. When a human being vomits, it's usually not for good reasons, right? It's usually the body's way of trying to clear, if you're not well, it's trying to clear toxins, trying to clear things that are wrong. It's your body's way of responding to your body being under super stress. Yeah. Like it's, and like I can tell you now, my fighters have never vomited in training. And that's because I know when to pull them back. Like, look, that's way too much. Like it's week 8 of an 8-week camp. Like, you are pushing way too hard. Like, trust the process. And in 4 weeks time, we will up it or whatever your process is. Yeah. It's like you said, it's a programming periodization thing. Like you've got to know, you've got to have a plan. You can't just be slamming people because, like you said, yes, you will get results by smashing people, but if you look at people as an investment, you'll begin to realize that investment is not going to come back to you for a very long time, if that makes sense. And that's how I see my fighters. I see my fighters as investments in a lot of ways. I invest in them, and I want it to be a long-term investment. I don't want it to be, and you hear about this in gyms like, oh, I haven't seen old mate, like he's had 6 fights and then he's just disappeared. And I'm like, well, I can probably tell you why. Like he's burnt. He's burnt out.
He's burnt out and he's fucking sore and things are fucked.
He's tired. He's mentally drained because you've been bashing him every day. Like, I know that fighters like to believe that they're superhuman. I think athletes like to believe that they're superhuman, and and a lot of people do see, especially fighters, like in that way, like they're like godlike. They're ripped and they're lean and they're smashing people. And at the end of the day, we're all human and we come down eventually. Our body, and if we don't do it, our body will do it for us, or our mind will do it for us.
You probably hear this often too. People are like, "Oh, I was overtraining," and I don't believe in that term. It comes down to the under-eating, or they were progressed at too fast of a rate that the body couldn't adapt to it.
Yes.
And so under-eating, quite often people are like, oh, I'm eating plenty. It's like, well, you may feel that, but there's a reason why things are breaking down and recovering. And our perception does not mean data. And like, I know people don't want to track their calories, and that's fine if you don't want to, but I just want people to also be like, if you don't want to track calories, but you're not recovering well, you can just be like, I'm probably not eating enough, but I don't want to invest the time into doing that in that sense. Yes. That's cool, because at least you're just not being ignorant to it.
For sure.
Then the whole thing of whether it is, because people like, I'm overtraining, it's like, you got ultra runners out there who can run like 100 kilometers and they can get through that shit. And you see them doing, 20, 30, 40, 50K runs per day, whatever it is in their cycle. But these people obviously build up to that. You just don't suddenly run 100 kilometers. Unless you're like David Goggins, and that's crazy as shit how he, he tapes his feet up where they're all bleeding and broken shins and stuff. But that's a whole other thing.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
So that's why periodization is having some kind of planning. For me, myself, as you said before, like sometimes athletes feel like superhuman. Sometimes like, I can do more. It's like, well, I have in the past, but that's not now. Especially coming off injuries and stuff, I got to go back and kind of analyze stuff as coach. Okay, you can't do this yet. Just do this. So I feel now that I've dropped back to only 3 weight training and 3 jiu-jitsu is the goal, part of me is like, but you used to do fucking 9, 10 classes of jiu-jitsu. But I was able to do that because I wasn't lifting weights.
Yes.
So there's different kinds of fatigue and stress too. So I might be able to start doing more later on, and I'm sure some of these top jiu-jitsu guys are, because they freaking do countless hours of jiu-jitsu and strength training, but it's been an adaptation that they've built up over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I was training for fights, when I was fighting professionally and, really serious about it, I was training 5 days, 6 days a week, 4 hours a day. Hard training. I was doing 10K runs and, thousands of knees and thousands of push kicks and sparring and clinching. But I also wasn't running a business, and I also wasn't responsible for the development of over 100, 100 members and a fight team of 8 to 10 fighters. So, like you said, there's variables and things change.
There's external stresses as well, and that's a big thing too. Whether it's business relationships and stuff as well, and that's so I was ignorant to that stuff in my past when I was a bodybuilding coach. I was ignorant because I just kind of do my business. In my being a PT, I had the flexibility to do stuff. It's like, if you want it, you can just fucking make it happen. Obviously, I've been humbled by life and whatever. I'm like a lot more willing to listen and try to go with that. What I wanted to ask you is, when you got up to that level of being able to train, how long do you believe like your progression was to get to that 4 hours kind of training daily thing? Like, was it a year or 2 years when you decided to really step it up? If you could kind of lay that out. So I would like to set an expectation for anyone listening in who wants to be a pro fighter.
I would say it took me longer than it should have. Partly because of outside stresses, but also because there was no, and which is what we've been talking about this whole podcast, is there was no set plan, there was no set structure for my training. It was just show up and just do the same things you do every day for 4 hours. And, there's a bit of an attitude in combat sport where, a lot of coaches will say, oh, you just got to show up. You just got to just do the work, Just do the work and it will happen. And again, for myself, I cannot handle that kind of approach to a sport that I'm so passionate about. I believe that there are so many ways that you can really, really fine-tune a fighter to the point where they can get to a certain level in half the time it's taken, most people. And it's not because they're better or because they're harder working or because there's, they're more talented, but it's just because there was a plan and they just followed the plan. And so I would say it took me maybe about a year before I started to feel like, oh, okay, like I can run a 10K and I can do what's expected of me when I get back to the gym, and I can put in pretty good effort on the mats. And obviously that would change depending on fights and what week I was in. If I was training for fights, then I would be able to do more, because obviously there was a goal and there was a time limit to my training, so I had to get to a certain stage. I believe going into fights, I was very well prepared in some, then I was not very well prepared in others. And again, I believe that's because there was not much planning, to the camp and, what I'm doing on specific days and things like that. And it's funny because you probably only see that in combat sport. Like even in bodybuilding, there's so much planning. You know?
Well, you'll be surprised how much is still poorly executed with coaching.
Right.
It's just a week by week, which is true. There's a week by week you need to make, changes accordingly, but that's not what the plan should be.
Right.
Exactly. And as whenever I have my guys, I got a powerlifting guy. He originally just wanted to lift and get stronger, but lose some body fat, doing well. And I always encourage people that have fat loss goals. I try to sway them towards performance goals, so it isn't always fixated on the scales, because it always goes up and down. You should have some weekends where you have some fun, let your hair down. That's life. That's why we train, is to improve lives. But if you're just eating freaking spinach and fish all the time, it's a terrible life. And so quite often people start to focus on performance. He's now actually going to do a powerlifting comp. So I was like, okay, cool. We're going to do our week to week. But this is what we're kind of doing, and set it on a calendar. These are the weeks where we're doing kind of hypertrophy-based stuff. Then we're moving to strength here and this kind of trend. So he has an idea, and that's really big in powerlifting. That's really, really huge. But you'll be surprised in bodybuilding. It's not like that. They're just like, all right, I cut again. And this is in general with people with dieting. You got to have milestones to tick off, and then analyze at that milestone whether what was successful and what wasn't in that block of training. But I find what I end up going with that segue with planning and how bodybuilding I find isn't as good, and combat sports, ironically, I think is that way as well. But I've found fighters, with shows, someone pulls it hey, you want to fight? It's like, yeah, I'll fight in 3 weeks. Fuck yeah, it's exciting. And they're like, hey, cool, you need to drop 7 kilos to make this weight. They're like, fuck yeah, I want to do it. It's like, but you can't drop 7 kilos and still perform in that period of time. Unless you set yourself up like Ryan, who I've been looking after for some time now. He dropped 10 kilos in 7 weeks to make weight. But in that, we're increasing his food, getting his, we want to say, his metabolism up. Just let alone just the calories and the carbs that he's getting in. So as soon as we manipulate a little bit, 2-3 kilos comes off. Cool. Put some more food back in, support performance, and this kind of thing. Then you can manipulate 3-4 kilos pretty easy in your final peak week kind of thing.
Sure.
But if you aren't in that kind of system beforehand, you can't then start that phase. All right, I've got to fight in 6 weeks. And I 6 weeks is kind of the minimum in my eyes where you should start transitioning nutrition-wise. So for you, what is a time frame do you put as possibly the shortest where you can probably take a fight on short notice? Obviously, there's outliers of where the person is and the weight cut. But what is a minimum would you say for a fighter?
So are we talking about myself, or are we talking about my fighters?
Just your fighters. Let's just say...
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. More to someone who's listening who maybe is fighting or is interesting, what would be a minimum turnaround period?
Well, it's exactly what you're saying. It's not about 5-6 weeks, when is the best time, or when is the most optimal, or when is the absolute shortest. It's everything that you're doing beforehand. It's the lifestyle that you're living before that. And again, I give Jesse as an example. It's happened in the last 3 fights. They've come on either 4 to 5 weeks notice. And I asked them the weight, they give me the weight. And her last fight was at 63.5. But most of her fights have been up at between 66 to 70. So she had never been down to 64. Oh, actually, it was 64. Yeah. She had never been down to 64 before. However, because she lives the lifestyle of a professional fighter, she is always just constantly making sure she's eating well, and she's got enough to train, and she's not overeating, she's not binging, she's not having late nights, she's not going out in town, she's just constantly developing her skills. For Jesse, I'm confident to take a fight in 4 weeks notice, on 4 weeks notice, but that's because I know that she's done all the work. She's done all the hard stuff, of keeping her weight down. But a fighter coming off the couch, like one of my fighters just coming off the couch, who's just chilling and watching, 6 weeks is pushing it. You're pushing it. Yeah. Yeah. So I would say absolutely minimum 6 weeks, but I would want more than that. However, the thing with fighting, as you would probably know, is that you aren't getting that kind of time, man, if you're an amateur.
Yeah.
You aren't getting that kind of
for sure.
time. Yeah, promoters don't care about you. Like, they don't care about amateurs. They're not going to say,
they just want some...
they just need a fill-in, man. Like, how much time do you need, man? And, you know, what do they say about success, right? It's opportunity meets preparation, right? Preparation meets opportunity. And that's where amateurs don't understand. Like, that's the difference between, like, pro mindset and AMI mindset, is that, like, as an amateur, preparation and opportunity, that's how you're going to get ahead.
Yeah, okay.
You have to be prepared. You have to just be ready for that 2-week call-up. I've had my fighters in the last year, 2-day call-ups, 24-hour call-ups,
Yeah.
you know, 1-week call-ups. But my guys are ready. They're ready because they told me that this is the life they wanted. You know, they told me this. They said, I want to be a fighter. And I said to them, well, to be a fighter and to be successful, not just to be a fighter, but to be a successful fighter, you got to be on your game all the time. You can't be sitting, you know. When you become pro, it's a bit different. You do get more time. You get an 8-week camp. You get a 10-week camp because, again, promoters know that professionals, 9 times out of 10, show up. Yeah. So they will put the money into them. They will, you know, market them. They will send, you know, they will book flights and book accommodation. But amateurs, you're not getting that kind of time, man. So if there are any, you know... Yeah, go ahead.
The baseline for the pro, what they're going to be at to start camp, that's a lot higher as well.
Yes.
So they still got to be preparing to be close to that baseline for fight camp.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, base fitness has to be there already. You don't want to be building your fitness up. You don't want to be worried about that. You want to be more focused on technique, you know, skill, fight IQ, what your opponent likes to do, what they don't like to do. You know, it's really more about strategic sort of things. And yeah, so if there are any like AMI fighters that are listening and want to know how to be successful, I believe that's one of the best places to begin, is being prepared, and be prepared in all ways. Not just prepared to say yes. Like, I think a lot of like amateur fighters think that's what that means. Like, you know, just be ready to say yes, and that's enough. Well, it's not, because, you know, you want to win. I know a lot of coaches say, like, winning's not important. Like, you know, why are you fighting then? Like, why are you getting in there, putting your body on the line, you know, to just be a punching bag then? Like, well, you can just be a punching bag in my gym every day if that's what you want. Like, you can come in and my fighters can knock you around and practice their strikes on you. You know what I mean? Like, you know, but if you want to win, which is important, if you want to be successful, you have to win. You have to win a lot more than you lose.
Well, even if you lose, you want to be competitive.
100%. You want to lose well.
If you're competitive, and like, because I lost my first match to one of the guys that he's ranked 5th in Australia. He's really good. He's high competitive, blue belt, and he's very intelligent. I knew I was going to lose to him, but I'm like, you always got to fight his chance. You know, you know, I guess. But at least I can look back and okay, this is where I was in it, this is where I fucked up, and then I can at least analyze it. I've had friends who have done combat sports stuff, and then they go to show me the video, and like, what did I do wrong? He was like all of it. And I'm sure you've seen this before, like, it didn't go right from the get-go. You know, and it's like, and that comes down to, I believe this, even in bodybuilding as well, but I see that a lot, like, sometimes coaches get clients on stage that are many weeks out from should being on stage, but they do it because they want to post online that I had 10 athletes compete this weekend, and the promoter doesn't care because they're getting $100, $150 a pop per these people. And people will invest a lot of money and time to put on these shows, but end of the day, they don't get a whole lot back from it. And that's why I'm quite picky with bodybuilding coaching now. It's like, I want to make sure that you're more than ready when it comes around, because it's expensive. Sure. And like you said, promoters don't care. They want to fill those seats. If you get bashed up, it's still entertaining.
And it's still entertaining. And as a coach, I'm the type of coach that I have to cross my T's and I have to dot my I's when it comes to developing my fighters. I have to know that when I put you in the ring, we've done everything we can do. There's, you know, your nutrition was good. Your development was good. You know, you're fit enough. You're strong enough. You're ready. For me, I don't like to put people in because again, it's a safety issue. It's like this is fighting, man. It's not like it's not a sport that's based on scoring points. Even though there is a point scoring system, there's a lot of damage you can take. There's a lot of hurt you can take, and I want you to be as absolutely prepared as you can be. And even what you were saying about losing competitively, but in order for you to lose competitively, you have to be well prepared.
Yeah.
You can't just come off the couch 4 weeks in, lose 7 to 10 kilos in 3 weeks, and then expect to
from
win.
Not eating
and then expect to win or lose competitively. It's you might do it. There's obviously many situations where people's heart is strong and they push forward and they take the wins. But most of the time, even in those situations, you're taking a fair bit of damage. You're getting hurt a fair bit, and it's absolutely avoidable. I think that's the thing for me. Like all of that is absolutely avoidable if you just put the work in prep. Get a nutritionist like yourself to be on it. All the time. Like
hit me up, training.
Like, exactly. There's absolutely ways to do it. So. Going back to what we were talking about in terms of, how long does it take your body to acclimatize and all that sort of stuff, so the type of training, because again, Muay Thai training, if you're training traditionally, it's very, very demanding on the body. And I would say it took about a year, but again, when I started, I was actually quite heavy. I walk around at about 84, 85 kilos. I would fight at 76 kilos. But when I first started, I think it was about 94, 95 kilos.
Yeah.
And
you
just
still
running.
Get down to 70, yeah.
Yeah, and just running, like with 95 kilos on my frame, which is not supposed to be carrying that kind of weight.
Yeah.
It was tough. It was tough on my back. It was tough. So I lost weight to about 80 kilos. And I was moving between 80 to 83 before I had my first fight. When I had my first fight, I think it was 80 kilos.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And it comes a part in that where people are just, it's like almost a dieting contest to make weight to then possibly fight. It's like, but then you're so fixated on making weight, you're not focusing on performing and fighting and, learning tactics and skills. It's like you're taking away the whole point of, I guess, the art or the game.
1,000%.
And that's what.
Yeah, and this is what a lot of gyms also do with like fitness. I always say to my fighters, this isn't a CrossFit competition. Like you don't win because, and I know a lot of gyms believe that. Like if you're fitter than your opponent, you will win.
Yeah.
But that's been disproven so many times.
Yeah.
The Thais disprove it all the time. They are unfit when they step in the ring. They haven't been training. You can see it in their bodies. And they win. And what is that? Like, you look at the Westerners who are fighting them and they're super fit and they're super strong, but they're not beating them. And what is that? Well, that's experience and technique and fight IQ and all that sort of stuff, which none of that comes from being fit. Like, that doesn't come from, like, you don't get that from being fit. And like you said, like, it's the same thing with losing weight. They focus so much on making weight that they forget that it's supposed to be about the performance. It's supposed to be about the fight. For sure. Definitely.
So for anyone that is like looking at fighting, say 12 weeks time or so, for like the end range of weight loss, I say 10%. So if you're 80 kilos in 12 weeks or so, you want to be dropping 8 kilos. Like that's what I say. Like you can do more, but you have to accept that doing more, you're most likely going to have compromised performance. And then if you can take that on, be like, because there are some people, like you said, that are unfit, but they're really skilled. They can accept that I may make weight at 80%, but my 80% is still going to beat that person. Yeah. Which is cool, and if you can do that. But I guess for any amateur person taking a fight on short notice, I then say 5% of your body weight. So if you are 80 kilos, 4 kilos is that kind of max range.
For sure. And so one thing that I wanted people to understand too, like especially with amateurs, this is how we approach it. If you're an amateur fighter and you want to have a fight, in terms of like weight loss, one thing that I think a lot of fighters need to understand, or people who want to get into fighting, is that when you first fight, especially from your first fights to maybe your fifth or sixth fights, fighting at a certain weight, like a heavier weight, say if I walked around at 80 kilos, I would tell my fighters that they need to be fighting at least 5 kilos lighter. At least 5 kilos for their first few fights. And you won't be getting that fight until you actually come within range of that. Like 3 kilos within range of that, 3 kilos. So you got to lose 2 kilos. And within that range of 3 kilos, we can definitely manage that. And it's not just because of that, like that they have to lose weight, but it's also because they have to remember that a lot of gyms cut, like what you're talking about, they cut massive weight. They are coming down from 85 kilos to 75 kilos. And then their rehydration protocols and all those things that, like I don't
touch
understand.
Wood they do it properly.
Exactly. If they do it properly, they're giants.
Hits fucking hard.
They're giants, man. And so when you're trying to learn the skills of Muay Thai, when you're trying to learn all that sort of stuff, you're better off fighting lighter, where it's going to be more physically competitive.
Yeah.
And they're
just simply going to have less weight to hit hard.
Exactly. And then once you are comfortable with technique and you understand how fighting works, how to fight in the ring, then you can start fighting a little bit heavier. Then you can start fighting more closer to your natural walking around weight, because then it's technique over size. All of those things come into play. And I would say, like, if a gym is focusing on getting their guys so big and so light on fight night, but I'm focusing on getting them so skilled that by the time 2 beginners meet, at 10 fights each, my guy 9 times out of 10 is going to win, because he's had more time practicing his craft and his art, right? And then again, like, I don't have my fighters, especially early on, I don't like them to worry about weight or anything like that, because
it's multifaceted. There's a whole lot there. Like, not even doing your training and dieting, then you got to learn how to deal with like the stress about coming into the fight. Whether you are confident in your skill, and it's huge. There's a lot there. And I know that from even just doing jiu-jitsu. And I know in jiu-jitsu, like, even though I've had some injuries, like, there's a lot less chances of me getting hurt versus actual Muay Thai or boxing, where they can literally knock you out and give you a concussion. Like, that stuff is a much lesser. And to be honest, that's why I enjoy jiu-jitsu as well. I don't like getting punched in the face a whole lot.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So the stress with coming into competition, I'm sure, with Muay Thai or boxing, that would be higher. I know I would get more scared even thinking the idea of possibly doing MMA. I don't know if I ever will. I don't think I have that ticket. So speaking on that ticket, like, is there something that, someone who's kind of athletic, skillful, but they don't have that like ticket where they want to hurt someone, knock them out? Is there something that you kind of help teach them to still be competitive?
Yeah. There's a saying that one of my favorite coaches that I follow, he says, heart, like having heart. This is what we're talking about, right? Having that thing, that makes fighters. One of my favorite coaches says that's just another word for confidence. If you are confident in something, you're going to perform, right? For example, like if you with bodybuilding and with jiu-jitsu, you've had so much time working on your craft that when it comes down to being under pressure, you perform. Yeah. And so it's a bit of an unpopular opinion, to be honest, because I hear a lot in combat sport, like, you can't teach heart, you either have it or you don't. I don't agree with it. I don't believe that. Yeah. I believe that you can manufacture hearts, or you can create heart in somebody by removing doubt from them. And how do you remove doubt? Is you train. You become more confident because you're training. But it has to be specific training. You have to specifically train them. You don't just have them show up and knock them around and smash them, and that's not going to help confidence at all. Yeah. It might help them think, I can take a beating, but that's not what we want to do, right? So that's the way I approach it. I tell my fighters, like, if you want to have heart, you want to be strong-hearted in the ring, you have to do the work.
Yeah.
You have to do the work that's in front of you. If I tell you to drill this every day for 40 minutes, you've got to do it. And the good thing about that is that I can tell whether you've done the work or not. It's because if I see no heart in you after 6 weeks, you haven't done the work. And that's one of the best things about fighting, right? Is that you can lie and you can like cheat and you can pretend that you've done the work, but as soon as you get in that ring, it comes out. It comes out when you have that ticker or that heart, you know. And then what we also do is that I try not to handle the emotional, mental side of things, the mental health side of things. And a big reason for that is that because I'm just simply not qualified. I'm just simply not qualified to give you the answers that I feel you might need. And also because my experiences are not your experiences. The way I've handled things in my lifetime may not be the way you can handle things in your lifetime, because maybe you were brought up differently to me. Maybe you have a different view on life. And so what we have done with that, and you would have seen this, I'm hoping because you've worked with a few of our fighters and you're privy to a few of the things that we do. We have brought in a mental health therapist, so a hypnotist, Richard Hart, who handles all of that sort of thing for me. If my fighters are feeling nervous about a fight, or they're not feeling too great, you know, they don't think things are going very well, they will speak to Richard. They will give him a Zoom call or flick him a text, and he'll give him a call, and then they will talk through things, and they will handle the mental health portion of their development.
Or sports psychology. Like,
yes.
There's an other side with that too, because obviously self-sabotage or even like just self-doubt inhibits a lot of other stuff. And that's why I have this thing, you may have seen me posted online, where I now say I'm unstoppable.
Yeah.
And it's more of the fact where sometimes I have moments where I'm like, oh, fuck, shit isn't working out. I just got to keep saying it and self-actualize that idea. It's not that I don't think I'm undefeated, and I think there's a difference between unstoppable just means that I won't stop no matter what.
For sure.
You know, I may lose a fight or whatever it is, but I'm not going to stop trying, pursuing what I wish to do. And that's why I say that all the time. And you could even say I lie to myself a little bit at times when I don't believe it, but the more often I say it, the easier it happens. It's easier to say.
Well, I mean, you know, all throughout history, there's so many, you know, figures that speak on that. You know, so many well-known figures that speak on speaking things into existence. And if you have like a belief in God and the Bible, you know, and faith, things like that, which is my background. You know, I was brought up with that of you know, if you want something, you have to speak it, and then you have to go do it. You know, and faith without action.
Now you said go do it as well.
Exactly, because faith without actions, is just words. It just words. Yeah. Whereas, you know, I mean, I guess we can go back to that question where you were asking me about, you know, did I ever have moments, you know, with my gym, my business, where I was like, oh, this isn't working. I don't know if I can do this. I think that's why I never really had those kind of issues, because, you know, I would say this is what I want, and I believe it, and I'd say it, and then I'd just go do it. I'd make a plan and not just go do it. See, like, that's not what, you know, not just go do it. Like, I would make a plan and then I would initiate the plan.
Yeah, and then tick off what you can or what you can control currently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's how we handle things at our gym when our fighters are struggling with, you know, self-doubt, which is a massive one. I think that was probably my biggest issue when I was fighting. Was self-doubt, which a lot of people would be like, what? Like, pretty poor Hosking had self-doubt and was, you know, questioning himself, and, you know, everyone goes through it, and everybody, you know, has to deal with it. And again, I'm the type of person, though, that I had to do something about it. I couldn't just carry on with my life, like going into a fight, and a couple of fights where I just got absolutely my ass handed to me. You know, and not because they were better than me, but because mentally I was not strong enough. I just wasn't. Didn't have that right, and the preparation wasn't great, so the ticker wasn't there, and my mind got the better of me, and so I would lose the fights. But I met Richard Hart, and I worked with him. Actually, worked with him for my WMC title against Prickles.
Okay, cool.
And And I would say that was the game changer for me. Even getting my mind right seemed to help me. I would go to the gym and I would train the house down. Like I trained with one of my best mates, Matthew Smith. You would know Chop. He trained me for that fight, and he's a hard man. He's a hard trainer. He gives nothing. You have to earn it all. And I believe that if I hadn't been working with Rich at the time, I would have struggled in those sessions. And I did struggle. Like, they weren't easy. But even he commented on it halfway through. He said, I've never seen Paul like this. He's going to win. He's going to beat him. He's going to take this belt. And he goes, but I've never seen him train this way. Like, he's absolutely training the house down. And obviously I wanted it. I wanted the belt really bad. But I also was doing that mental health prep work, which, as you would know, if you want to be successful at something,
you gotta have those conversations and have the tough conversations. Like, if you aren't feeling confident, well, then why don't I feel confident? And then you could be like, okay, I haven't done A, B, and C, even though I've done this and that. It's like, well, then no wonder you don't feel confident, because you know. So, and I say this to my clients quite often. They're like, oh, I feel a bit anxious with kind of my tracking and stuff. Like, well, why? Like, what aren't you comfortable with? And like, oh, I'm not comfortable with some of this tracking or my weekend stuff. It's like, all right, well, how do you make that better? Because that's the only solution. Or you just be okay with going at a slower rate. And it just, when people then can take it on board, and they become confident in what their plan is. And this is, I guess, kind of reverse engineering in the sense with you saying having a plan. Sometimes myself coaching people, they're trying to execute the plan, but they're not, whether it is self-confidence or there are external things where maybe the bar was set too high with their lifestyle or their work commitments and they couldn't get there. Then you got to backtrack it and have the conversation why you weren't able to. Now let's get confidence in this new plan moving forward. I know I was going to say something else before I went on that venture and I forgot it. Bummer. So that's what I was going to say. In that preparation, you started working on your mental health. In that early phase, were there moments or conversations that you had with yourself where you realized, like, this isn't right, I need to seek help? Like, can you paint that picture a little bit more?
Do you mean, like, when did I start to have this conversation, when I start to realize this was a problem? Realize
that, okay, this isn't right. I can't continue on possibly losing fights because of my self-doubt, all these conversations I'm having with myself. I went and go see Richard. Like, what was kind of a turning point, a realization for you for that moment?
Oh, there's nothing like getting knocked out to really put things in perspective, and that's exactly what happened. The fight that I was in previously, before I challenged for the WMC title, I was knocked out. I got knocked out in the second round with a big overhand that I didn't see coming. And that really made me look back on all the fights that I had won, all the fights that I had lost, and just going, what was the difference? How come on one night I was really, like, I was on fire, and then I would fight a few weeks later and my mind was just, I just couldn't put it together. And this is nothing against my opponent. Like, this is not like, I'm not shitting on him or anything like that, but he was not as good as I was. I was technically better, better speed, fought better opponents. I was just better. However, because my mind wasn't right, none of that mattered. When I stepped into the ring with him, mentally he was better, and so that was really the turning point for me. I was offered the fight maybe about 3 months later. I was offered the fight. Hey, do you want to fight Aid Walker for WMC title? And I was like, absolutely. Like, I want that belt, but it's against Aid Walker, who's a much more dangerous fighter, who's a much more well-rounded type boxer. He can clinch, he can knee, he can elbow, he can leg kick, and he's got good hands. How am I going to beat this guy when I couldn't even beat a guy that I don't believe was as accomplished or as good as I was? Yeah. And so I knew that I had to do something up here. Like, again, mentioning Matt Smith, he used to always say to me when we were training together that when I'm on, he said, when you're on, no one in the super middleweight division can beat you. No one. when you're on. So I was always remembering that, like, when I'm on, when I'm off, how do I stay on? Like, how do I stay on for 8 to 10 week camp, get in there and get it done? And I was actually preparing to fly over to the UK to catch up with Frankie for Christmas. I think this was 2018, and I was slated to fight him in 2019, early 2019. And I was talking to Jesse and a few other people from my gym about how this fight's coming up, and I really want it, but mentally I'm not, ready to. I don't think I'm ready for it. But I said yes. That's the thing. I said yes. I was like, yes, and I'll deal with this however I need to deal with this to make this fight happen. And I was just scrolling through Instagram, man. Like, I was just going through Instagram. And I don't know if it's the algorithms, you know what I mean, of like Instagram and Facebook, but this profile popped up, and it was an ad for Richard Hart, English hypnotist. And I tried everything. I tried so many different ways, changing the way I train and doing this and doing that. So at that point, I was just open. I was just open to it. I was just open to anything, really. And so when I messaged him, I had a look at it, and he was based in England, in Birmingham, which is not far from where Frankie was. So I, in my mind, I was like, I'm going to message this guy. I'm heading over to England anyway. I'm going to try and book an appointment and go see him and go from there. But he messaged me back, and he said, like, oh, I don't do in person. It's all online. Like, I do Zoom calls, and you go under hypnosis, and we work on things from there. So I was like, I wasn't a believer in that sort of thing. Like, again, I come from like a Christian background, so anything like that is kind of like, it's a bit weird. But I was open to it, man. Like, I was open. Like, I was going to try anything, because that's how badly I wanted to win this fight. So I said to him, yeah, cool. When I get back from England, I'll touch base and let's see what happens. So that happened. We touched base. I met him. We had a chat. And then we got into it. And I'll be honest, like, the first 2 or 3 sessions, I was like, what am I doing? Like, what is this? Like, he's like, close your eyes. I want you to just imagine this and visualize this. And he's talking about like energy balls and, imagine like this house and watch this bullet going flying past. And like, it was just all this like how is this helping me? Like, how is this going to help me? But again, like I said, I was just so ready to try, to try and find something that would really give me that edge I needed to fight. And again, I'm happy. I'm absolutely blessed that I gave it the opportunity, because it absolutely changed everything. Even my approach to being a coach, even my approach to business, it all seeped. Everything I learned from him, it all seeped into my life. It just spread into the way I approach things, and my confidence grew from it. But like I said, nothing like getting knocked out, man. Like, to really
So that was a big turning point where you're like, fuck it, I don't want that to happen again.
I don't want that to happen again, man. Like, so
going back to that, where you were saying, is there a go-to like tool or kind of ritual that you may do that you've learnt from Richard that you kind of go back to that's kind of easy? Is there like a little tip that you could give someone from that?
Well, without giving too much away, There are a set of questions that he got me to ask myself through the camp, and he gets my fighters to ask themselves, and he gets anybody who works with him to ask themselves. And what it does is just like, you ask these questions to yourself, and they just help you focus. They just help you focus on where you need to focus, because again, like, especially with fighting, there's so much going on. There's so many little things you have to remember, and so many little nuances and like body language, and which direction do I move, and which kick should I use, and all that sort of stuff. And one of the questions he says is, where did you give great effort? And that's what I ask myself all the time. Where did I give great effort? It might be in a sparring round. It might be in a class that I'm taking. It might just be the overall day. Like, what have you done today that you gave really great effort to? And when I answer that question, it helps me focus myself. Like, what have I done today that's been really, really good? Because I know that, like, and you would know this too, like with mental health and like with people that you work with, people are so focused on negative stuff. They just want to focus on all the things they did wrong.
Negativity bias,
And that was a massive thing that I learned from is like, and like what you were speaking about, how you say, I'm unstoppable now. Like, I'm just unstoppable, because you are who you spend the most time with all day.
Yeah, 100%.
So you get really used to hearing yourself. And if yourself is saying to you like, "Oh man, you're a loser. You're not gonna make it," you're gonna believe yourself. It doesn't matter how.
And then why should I try? Why should I even bother? I'm a piece of shit. So
and why should I listen to Tyler? He doesn't know me. I only get to talk to him an hour a day or an hour in a week. And, so what would he know? Whereas, when you ask yourself a question like that, like, where did I get great effort? Okay, so in this round, I threw my left kick a lot and I landed a lot. And then straight away, you're just like, I did good. Like I'm doing well, And then where do you want to focus on next? Like, what do you want to focus your efforts on next?
Yeah.
Okay, so in round 2, I want to add my left hand. I want to throw my left hand. I want to hit him at least 3 times. Oh, great. So let's focus on doing that. Whereas before I started working with Rich, it was, the first time I answered this question, he said, "Where did you give great effort?" "Oh, I didn't block that kick, and I didn't move out the way, and I got caught with his right hand." And he was just like, look at how you're talking to yourself. You really focus on the negativity of everything. And that is a tool that I've used to this day. I think I worked with him. 2019 I worked with him. 2022 now, and that is something that I use every day, and even unconsciously too. I don't even ask myself the question sometimes. I just think to myself, where can I focus my efforts? What can I focus on? Like, what can I change? What can I not change? If I can't do anything about that situation, I just don't give energy to it. Just move on, and I just move forward.
That's really comforting because I've applied. I have self-assessment questions for all my clients when they have their check-in, and it's like, what went well? How was your week overall? What did you do well? What didn't go well? What could be done better in hindsight on that? But always then kind of coming from of knowing what you did well and what one thing you can do better this week. And like you were saying, in that you had that self-talk, I didn't do this and that. And they avoid actually highlighting what they did well. And I do this quite often. Check-ins like, well, okay, you avoided it, and I know you feel like shit, and we're going to work on getting that better because you know what you need to do. But still, what did you do well? Because you still need to celebrate some kind of win because your efforts weren't useless. Even if it wasn't a productive progressing week, you may have even gone backwards, but there was something that you learnt from that week. Something still would have been good, and there's still always a takeaway from, there's always some kind of lesson. You win or you learn, right? But there's always some kind of lesson, and I always find that people even skip some of the questions, and I can tell they're doing it. It's like, hey, you need to go through this process because that is actually really valuable than just having, these are your numbers and this is like your training program. It's like, 100%. Cool, but you're not going to follow it. And I was having a conversation with an old client last night. She's been struggling with motivation. She's like, can you send me some of your posts that help with motivation? I'm like, it just comes down to you. Action creates motivation. Just go for a fucking walk in the morning. It's that simple. And I know it sounds gammon being in that way, but it's like, if you go for the walk in the morning, get outside and you do a good task at the start of your day, you create that winning kind of cycle. You've done it. Winners like winning.
Exactly.
So then you've had a win for the day. All right, now you're maybe going to cook your breakfast or something like that. Then you go to the gym. And it's funny, if you had that conversation, I seen her in the gym today and she was smashing out a leg workout too. I had said hi to her. I was like, fuck yeah, it clicked. And it just comes back to action creates motivation. And you can even link with motivation with emotion. So if you're trying to rely on motivation and emotions to control your actions, then you're letting that win and control you. Even if you feel down but still go for the walk, your actions are going to create motivation or control your emotions. And that's a big thing that I tell people. And I have a follow-up thing that I had said to her, is like, if I don't do anything physical by noon, whether it's a short walk, jiu-jitsu, or weights, I'm not allowed to complain the rest of that day if I feel tired or not motivated. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel a bit cramped. Then I instantly I'm not allowed to complain. I didn't do it. Yeah. And then I don't miss twice.
Yeah.
So then I make sure I do it the next day.
Yeah, and that's what it is, right? At the end of the day, it's that planned action. It gets rid of doubt, gets rid of not being able to stay motivated, not being able to get up and get it done. You've got to get up and do it. That's just, it is that simple. And I think a lot of people, they don't want to hear that. That's what I've seen is that, a lot of people come to the gym and ask me, how do I get better? And I said, okay, you just got to do this. And it's very basic. You just got to do this every day for 30 minutes, and you'll begin to see improvement and change. And they'll just, all right, keep your secrets, And I'm like, no, man. I'm like, no, man. Like, I'm serious. Like, it is not that. It is not that complicated. It's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. You just got to get up and do it.
Yeah, and like, of course, it's multifaceted. There's a lot more layers, but the crux of it is simple. Just start doing something, and master the art of showing up. Like, if you literally are that down and you start training and something doesn't feel right, well then okay, you sit out and watch. Because even sitting out and watching, you may be still learning something. There's that exposure. And I was going to say this earlier when you said that longevity and safety for your clients that are fighting. The longer you have exposure to things, you start to see more in that.
Yeah.
And like, I even noticing, like, I've loved watching MMA, UFC for ages, but the more that I now do jiu-jitsu, I'm noticing more smaller details. I'm also starting to notice, I follow some more like skilled strikers and they do tutorial stuff. And I'm just having that exposure, I'm starting to see it more in the matches as well. So having longevity and a plan, that exposure over time creates understanding, I think is probably the better way to say it.
For sure. Definitely.
Well, I like to wrap up my HopeSpeak calls with 3 tips. So for you, what are 3 tips for an amateur, whether they have been training for some time or want to get started and possibly step in the ring? What would be the 3 biggest tips?
Oh, it's probably going to be some controversial things.
Yeah.
My first tip would be, if I could do it all again, if I could go back and be a beginner again, if that makes sense, and know absolutely nothing. Because obviously you can always be a beginner, you can always learn more things. But if I were a beginner, go back and do it again, I would demand more from my coaches. I would demand more in terms of, I want to be a decent fighter. How are you going to get me there? And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with asking those kind of questions. I think, again, I think in other sports, I think this is quite a normal thing. I think that, if people were to come to you, they come to you because you have a reputation of results, right? I would, if I were a beginner again, that would be the first thing I would do. I would make sure that who I'm being coached by has a plan, has a structure and a development process that I can follow that can get me where I need to be, where I want to be. If my goal is just to be a martial artist, if my goal is just to be a lifelong martial artist, then I guess that's not really, it's not as important, because you're chasing something that you're always going to be chasing for the rest of your life. You're
chasing that exposure, which you just spoke about, just being around it more.
But if you want to be a competitor, if you want to compete, there has to be a process. Every sport has it, from like tiny tuckers to like teen elites to professional, whatever, football players or baseball players. There is an actual process that you can see, that you can actually follow to become a professional athlete. I think that would be the first thing, that I would make sure that who I'm being trained by has a plan, understands how to get me to where I need to go. I understand relationships, and you have a relationship and there's an emotional connection. I absolutely get all that, but that's what I'm saying, is that put all that aside. If you really want to be good at fighting, you've got to have a plan. You've got to have somebody that understands how to get you from A to B to C to, in a span of time that isn't crazy, like 10 years, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. There's also setting an expectation of what they have of you and whether you can also believe you can fulfill that.
Yeah, exactly. And then everything is out on the table, and you know what's expected of you as well, which is exactly right. Second tip, man, these are tough questions. This is a tough question.
Yeah.
Second tip that I would give.
So number one, you're saying is more of ask your coach of what the plan is.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Cool.
Ask your
So
coach
two.
what the plan is, and is it something that you are prepared to be able to do? Is it something that
To commit to.
is achievable for you with your life and the way your priorities are and all that sort of stuff? Second thing that I would tell amateurs is that it is all up to you. It is all within your control. And what I mean by that is like you're all on your. I don't mean like you're all on your own. You know you got it's all up to you. Everything that happens to you is within your control.
Yeah.
If you want to be successful at something, it is within your control. You can definitely achieve it. If you want to stop, if you've had enough, that is all up to you as well. It is within your control. And saying that, remember that you chose it. If you decide that you want to be a fighter and you want to get in there and you want to fight, make sure that it's because you chose to be a fighter, not because somebody told you that you're going to be a really good fighter or that your coach is saying to you, like, I really want you to fight. You're going to be great at it. Because if it's not truly what you want, it never ends well. Because fighting is not the kind of sport that you can go, I might give it a crack for a couple months.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not like soccer. It's not like, I'm going to go down with the boys and play, you know, like have a few games, like in combat sport, whatever it is, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, boxing. As soon as you go to the competitive side of it and you want to get in the ring or you want to get on the mats, it has to be what you want. You have to make sure. So the first thing is, make sure there's a plan for you, that your coach has a plan for you.
Yeah.
Second thing is make sure that it is what you chose. That it's your choice. You wanted this.
That comes across in bodybuilding a lot. I find quite often, like, people always drop out of comp preps, and it's because they end up kind of, missing the mark. They miss a few training sessions or blowouts in their diet and stuff. And I think it ultimately comes back to that they're kind of pursuing it because they think it's cool or what's kind of trending. And that's one reason why I'm also kind of no longer so passionate about bodybuilding, because people do it because it's cool on Instagram and they just want to say they got this coach and they're doing this federation and they want to be part of the trend. When I did it, ages ago when I first got into it, like, I didn't know of anyone else in Cairns that was even kind of doing bodybuilding. There was one of my friends did a season beforehand, and I knew another guy at another gym. Like, that was it. And I think, like you said, you got to want it, and also do it because you want to. You literally want to achieve that end result, and for whatever reason that is valuable to you.
Exactly, and if you know that it's the choice that you made, you're going to show up. Because you want to be there. You want to show up. You want to learn. You want to get in there and have a fight. And like you said, if you're doing it because you think it's like cool, it's the worst sport to try to be cool in. Like
you'll find out real quick.
You'll find out real quick how tough it is and how being cool doesn't get you very far. And the third one,
number 3,
third tip, man. I'm trying to think of what I tell my fighters, my AMI fighters.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what I say to them. And the thing that keeps coming up is we always have this saying is that, trust the pretty process. And I always say that to newcomers because there is a process that we have. There is an actual structured process that we follow. Trust the process and enjoy it. Have fun. Like I said, if it's something that you want to do, you're going to have fun. You're going to enjoy it. Whether you're getting punched in the face or not, it doesn't matter. Because if you chose it, if you chose it, then you're going to love it. Whether whether you like it or not. If you're showing up training and you're not liking it, like you're not loving it, like I don't love being rear naked choked by Hoping, right?
Yeah.
I don't I'm not enjoying this at all. Like this is horrible. Like, you're probably not you're probably not in the right sport, I mean,
Yeah.
For yourself, I'm pretty sure when you get submitted, you're not thinking, oh, God, I hated that. You're just thinking, yep,
I was like, oh, that was fucking sick. He got me with this, and then you like kind of know how he got you. Like, oh, you bastard, Yeah. And you love it, and obviously people outside of jiu-jitsu, like, it's quite often I'll be at some kind of social thing with some of my jiu-jitsu friends, and we're talking about it. They're just looking at us like, what the fuck? You like, getting excited about being choked out or nearly had your arm broken. Like, we look like fucking maniacs, but they obviously don't understand. It's like the process and understanding of it. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, so enjoying the process and making sure that wherever you're training, that they understand what your goals are. That whether you want to be a professional fighter or you just want to have a few fights or have one fight and see what it's like, because that sort of stuff does change things. It changes the development process. It changes what's expected of you. For example, if I meet a person who says, I just want to have one fight and see what it's like, I'll say to them, like, look, you got to be training at least 3 days a week. Yeah. Whereas if somebody comes to me and they say, no, I absolutely want to become a pro, I say to them, well, you're going to have to be training 4 to 5 days a week. It's a different requirement. So I would say, number one, make sure whoever you're training with has a plan, and they know how to get you to where you need to be to go. Second one is Hopey.
Well, we just said that before. So have a plan.
I can't remember.
Oh my God, I've gone blank. Oh no, because I was just thinking about trust the process. So, fuck.
Oh yes. So have a plan and make sure that it's your choice.
Oh, you got to commit to it. You got buy-in.
Yeah, make sure that it's what you want. Make sure that it is.
Yes, that's it.
It is all your choice. Because once you know that, you'll have control over every single situation, and that's what's important. Is that you have control over your own development. You can stop it when you want to. You can go as far as you want to. It is completely up to you. You are in control of your life and your development, and enjoy it. Once you make that choice and you go for it, have fun. Have the most fun you can have, because the people that you meet, the people that you come across in martial arts, yep, man, there's some bad apples. There's bad apples everywhere you go. But the majority of people that you meet in jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, boxing, they are genuinely amazing people. They're genuinely really
couldn't
great.
agree with that anymore.
Yeah.
100%. And I think it's because you are constantly humbled and kind of put in your place.
100%.
And 100%. So I love that. So they're 3 good tips. So with that, do you have anything else you'd like to, a message or anything else you'd like to say after those 3 tips before we wrap this up?
I mean, Hopey, it was hard enough to get those 3 tips out, man. Now you're trying to...
that was great advice. I just wanted to make sure you didn't squeeze that lemon.
No. I guess I just want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for having me on here.
My pleasure.
I really enjoyed chatting with you. It looks like we've gone for about an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's gone along, hasn't it? Sometimes it just rolls on. So, Pretty Paul, is that your Insta tag?
Yes, Pretty Paul Hosking is my Insta tag. Pretty Muay Thai. Pretty Muay Thai is our gym page. So yeah, you can find us on there. You can follow our journey and follow my.
I'll put those links in the bio part underneath in the YouTube section, so people can go directly to them. So thank you very much for your time. Ended up being longer than I thought, but it was also a great conversation. Hopefully this all comes out good. I'm sure it will. Anyway, that's us. Happy Friday, and you have a great time.
Cheers, brother. Thank you.
Cheers.